You know how America's never been successfully invaded on its home soil. Imagine a foreign army walking into Washington, D.C., burning it to the ground, and occupying it for 7 months. That's almost exactly what happened to Rome in 387 BC. But first, you need to understand what Rome was at this time. This wasn't the massive empire you've heard about. This was early Rome, just a city-state in central Italy, barely 350 years old, controlling maybe a few hundred square miles. Think of it like an ancient version of Singapore or Monaco, just one powerful city. But Rome had never lost, not once. They had the best-trained army in Italy. They were expanding, conquering their neighbors one by one. They thought they were invincible. Then the Gauls showed up. The Gauls were Celtic tribes from what's now France and Germany. And these weren't the kind of warriors Romans were used to fighting. Romans fought in organized formations with shields, armor, and discipline. The Gauls, they fought completely naked. Yes, naked. No armor, no shirts, just painted bodies, massive two-edged swords, and absolute fearlessness. They believed dying in battle guaranteed them a place in the afterlife, so they had zero fear of death. When Rome heard these barbarians were coming, they weren't worried. They marched their legions out to the river Allia, about 11 miles north of Rome, and set up in their standard formation. Then they saw the Gauls charge. Imagine thousands of screaming naked giants running at full speed directly at you, howling war cries, swinging swords that were taller than you are. The sound alone, this primal roar from thousands of throats, was designed to terrify, and it worked. The Roman army, the most disciplined fighting force in Italy, broke apart like glass. Soldiers threw down their weapons and ran. Officers abandoned their posts. The entire army dissolved into a panicked mob fleeing for their lives. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Romans prided themselves on discipline, but they'd never faced anything like this psychological warfare. 3 days later, the Gauls walked into Rome, and it was empty. The entire population, about 20,000 people, had evacuated. Only one place was still defended: the Capitoline Hill, a fortress on Rome's highest point. So the Gauls did what invading armies do. They burned everything. Temples that had stood for generations gone. Government records, property deeds, historical documents all burned. Houses, shops, monuments destroyed. This is actually why we know so little about Rome's early history. Most of their written records were destroyed in this fire. For 7 months, the Gauls occupied Rome, while the last defenders slowly starved in their fortress. Rome's allies didn't come to help. Surrounding cities were probably celebrating Rome's downfall. Finally, Rome had no choice. They negotiated a surrender. The price, 1,000 pounds of gold. To put that in perspective, that's about $12 million in today's money. And this was 387 B. See, that gold represented probably Rome's entire treasury plus emergency reserves. The day came to weigh out the ransom. The Romans brought the gold to what was left of their forum. They started weighing it on scales, but then they noticed something. The Gauls were using rigged scales. The weights were heavier than they should be, meaning Rome would have to pay even more gold. The Romans protested. "This isn't fair." We agreed on a price. The Gallic chieftain, a guy named Brenus, just laughed. He took his massive iron sword and threw it onto the scales. The weight crashed down, making the imbalance even worse. Then he said 3 words in Latin. Vivictus. It means woe to the conquered, or basically, too bad, losers. His point was simple. You lost the war. Winners make the rules. Losers don't get to complain about fairness. If you didn't want to pay whatever I demand, you should have won the battle. The Romans had to pile on even more gold just to meet the rigged weight. They paid it. The Gauls took their massive ransom and left. Now here's where this story gets important. Most cities in ancient times, if they got destroyed like this, they just disappeared. Archaeological sites all over the Mediterranean are filled with cities that got conquered once and never recovered. But Rome became obsessed. The day after the Gauls left, they started rebuilding. But not just rebuilding, they completely transformed everything. They built massive stone walls around the entire city walls, so strong that parts of them are still standing today. 2,400 years later, these walls were 30 feet tall and 12 feet thick. They reformed their entire military system. They studied what went wrong. They developed new tactics, new training, new equipment. They made sure their soldiers would never break and run again. And most importantly, they developed a national mindset. Never again. From 387 BC forward, Rome became a machine designed for one purpose: to make sure they would never be conquered again. And it worked. For the next 800 years, that's 8 centuries, no foreign enemy successfully invaded and occupied Rome. Not once. The Gauls came back and tried several more times. Rome crushed them. Carthage invaded Italy with Hannibal and his elephants, and came within a few miles of Rome, but never took it. Various enemies tried over and over. All failed. The city that was burned and humiliated by naked warriors went on to conquer the entire Mediterranean world. They built an empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. Why does this matter today? Because it's one of history's clearest examples of how people respond to trauma. Some civilizations experience a devastating defeat and collapse. Others use it as fuel. Rome chose fuel. That single day of shame in 387 BC created an 8th century empire. The humiliation didn't break them, it forget them. Vivictus suo to the conquered. The Gauls meant it as an insult. Rome turned it into a warning they would give to everyone else for the next 800 years. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you next time.